Hey guys, welcome back to week 6. This week we're actually going to work on a PRAC report. In this video, we're actually going to investigate the effect of heat on enzyme activity, since we've covered enzyme last week. In your PRAC report, you might be asked to write an intro or abstract before your hypothesis, but that really depends on what your teacher is looking for. So if you do need to write an intro, these are the things you should mention. First of all, you should explain the structure and function of normal enzymes. Tell us about the active site, tell us about where the substrate fits onto, and tell us about what enzymes do in general. Then you might want to explain the specific properties of the particular enzyme you have chosen. For example, with amylase, you might want to explain what the substrate is and what the product is for this reaction. The third thing you might want to do is explain why you are conducting this experiment. What are you trying to find and why? In your hypothesis, you should include both the independent variable and the dependent variable. The independent variable in this case would be the temperature, while the dependent variable, the thing being measured, is actually the enzymatic activity of amylase. So the complete hypothesis would be, as temperature increases, the enzymatic activity of amylase increases. In this hypothesis, we're showing a trend. Next up, the aim should just basically be a repeat of the hypothesis. You would say the aim of this experiment was, for example, to investigate the effect of temperature on enzyme. Note that in your aim, you must use past tense. Now, moving on to methods, there are a lot of things to be discussed in the methods. First of all, you might want to compile a list of equipment you've used in your experiment. Second, you want to list the variables that you have used, the controlled variable, the dependent variable, and the independent variable. Third thing you might want to do is include all the steps of your experiment. Say if you have 4 steps, the first step you're saying you should put this amount of amylase with this amount of starch, and then the second step you might want to say that I'm using this temperature. Third step, if you're using a calorimeter to measure the enzyme activity, then you might want to say how the calorimeter measures or when it measures. In the final step, what you want to do is actually to say, repeat the above steps 1 to 3 for the temperatures 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30 degrees Celsius. So here you're actually saying that the above steps was repeated and you don't have to write the same steps again. In your results, remember never include any analysis. The analysis should go in the discussion. What you add in the results is just basically tables, diagrams that help you present data. So say if you're actually writing up a table, the thing to do is first of all, give it a title. You should add, first of all, table 1, if this is the first table, so you give it a number and it's easier to refer to. Then you say the rate of reaction, brackets, calorimeter reading of amylase with corresponding temperatures. Here you are including the dependent variable and also the independent variable. Note that in your tables, you must include units, and that's very important. If you are drawing up a graph as well, also give it a number, graph 1, and then you say rate of reaction for amylase versus temperature. So the thing that comes first would be what's on the y-axis, the calorimeter reading, versus the x-axis, which is the temperature in this case. And note that everything here has units as well. Sometimes you might want to label some particular points. For example, for this graph, you might want to label 20 degrees Celsius, which gives a reading of approximately 60, and you can give it a different symbol or give it a different letter. And you can go on in your discussion to talk about the particular point you've actually marked on your diagram by referring to it as, say, point A on graph 1. In your discussion, first of all, start by saying that the calorimeter readings, or whatever thing you're using to measure the rate of reaction, reflects the rate of reaction for this particular enzyme. And then you go on to discuss key data. Remember in your discussion, it's always a good idea to quote values in your graphs or your tables. For example, you could say from temperature 0 degrees Celsius to 20 degrees Celsius, there was an increase of enzyme activity from 2 to 5 units for the calorimeter. Note that I've included here in brackets as observed from table 1, So in this case, you're giving very clear indication of where you're getting your data from. Next up, you follow that up with an explanation of why this occurs using your biological knowledge. Then you repeat this process for other points that you might want to talk about. Even if you get really odd results in your experiment, please don't change your answers because, first of all, it might not make sense, and secondly, you can actually write about errors in your discussion, which could give you quite a lot of marks. The way to write about errors is to say, for example, this particular point at 15 degrees or whatever degrees Celsius was not concordant with other results and did not fit into the graph. You could say a reason for that could be due to human error of not measuring or using the calorimeter properly, or you could add other errors as well. Always use past passive tense in your discussion. Then for improvements, you can go on and talk about how there are other things you can do. So in the improvements, it's acceptable to use future tense. Finally, the conclusion is just restating the hypothesis, but this time you can use particular data points that you have determined in your experiment. Read up on the conclusion that is on the screen, and I'll see you in class and we'll discuss specifics.